You're listening to A Radio.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement, and this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement, and it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than death, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shockers round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
We fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. While you're going about your daily business in the US, your Congress caught the Canadian affliction, that of letting people out of jail who actually committed violent crimes. I'm sure, like most of you, this passed you by, but it's commonplace in Canada, with liberal communists in control here. But one would have assumed Americans were a little bit more clued in. It appears not. Now, I make no apologies for the length of my podcasts. I keep saying that from time to time when they're not 55 minutes long, but that doesn't matter. It's just an aside, but they are as long as they are. Anyway, and yes, once again, this piece is from Fox News, and yes, once again, they've taken it down. So the only place you're going to hear it is here. Unless, of course, you want to subscribe to Fox Nation, though I thought we'd already paid for Fox News 3 ways from Sunday. Anyway, it's here. You can hear Tucker Carlson debating with Senator Kennedy. No, not that one. He's no longer around. The one from down south. Take a listen, and perhaps, if you're American, you might want to find out what the blank, blank, blank is going on in your country.
And give a second chance to nonviolent offenders. That's not what it's turned into. In fact, that law has allowed hundreds of violent criminals and sexual predators back onto the streets. An administration official provided this show exclusively with data on what crimes were committed by the felons being released under the First Step Act. Turns out most of them were not in jail for smoking a joint 30 years ago. Instead of the roughly 2,200 inmates who've been set free so far, 496 of them were in prison on charges relating to weapons or explosives. 239 had committed sex offenses such as rape and sexual assault. 106 committed armed robbery, and 59 had committed aggravated assault or murder. It's not what we were promised, is it? To remind us, we're happy to be joined tonight by Senator John Kennedy. He's a Republican who represents the state of Louisiana. Senator, thanks very much for coming on. I don't remember, and we did a number of segments on this at the time, I don't remember anybody advocating for this law saying, and then we're going to let some rapists out too. How did this happen?
Well, good intentions sometimes have nothing to do with actual consequences. I voted against this bill. 12 of us did. It got 87 votes, an overwhelming majority, but sometimes the majority just means that all the fools are on the same side. We were told that this would only allow low-level, nonviolent criminals to go free. I didn't believe it, and I didn't believe it because I read the bill. And now we find out that in the first tranche of prisoners let free, 500 committed weapons or explosive crimes, 250 committed sex crimes. I think there were 60 or 70 that were guilty of homicide or aggravated assault. And those are not low-level, nonviolent criminals. I told my colleagues, I said, look, if you want to have a debate in the Senate about the federal criminal code and what the maximum and the minimum ought to be, I'll stay here as long as you want to have that debate. But they didn't do it that way. They turned over all of our power to the administrative state, to the bureaucracy at the Bureau of Prisons, and they can pretty much let loose whomever they want to. The other reason I didn't...
Just be clear, not only is this not about releasing nonviolent felons, the majority, according to these numbers, are there for crimes of violence. The majority. So it was a complete lie, what they told us.
Yes. And I tried to explain to my colleagues, well, number one, I offered an amendment to require the victims of the crimes to be notified, not to give the victims a veto, but just to let the victims be notified. My colleagues wouldn't accept that. And I objected to giving all of this discretion to the administrative state at the Bureau of Prisons. Look, to me, this is pretty simple. I believe in the Kantian definition of justice. C.S. Lewis talked about it. St. Augustine talked about it. Justice exists when people get what they deserve. Now, justice is not necessarily deterrence or rehabilitation, though that can be a byproduct, but justice is when people get what they deserve. And I don't know why it is, Tucker. If I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. But there's some people in this world, they're not mixed up, they're not confused, they're not sick. It's not a question that their mama or daddy didn't love them enough. They're just bad. And they, when they commit criminal acts, justice requires that they be punished. And again, I can't say I'm surprised because I read the bill, but this bill was sold to America as only affecting low-level, nonviolent criminals, and that's just not accurate.
Asking you, the people who back this bill, I would say the majority of them would like to take my guns away, and they say it. And yet law hundreds of gun offenders out of prison early. How does that work? They want to take my guns away, but people who are convicted of gun felonies go free.
Look, this thing rolled through the Senate like thunder on a summer night. It wasn't just Democrats. All but 12 Republicans. All but 12 Republicans voted for it. Some of my good friends. And I offered an amendment with Tom Cotton to try to eliminate the Bureau of Prisons from turning loose some of the criminals that I knew were violent. That amendment was defeated. Then I offered an amendment and said, look, at least tell the victims that you're going to turn these guys or gals loose. And if you're going to turn a rapist loose, you ought to at least tell the victim. And that was defeated as well.
It's that is the most telling of all details. Senator, I appreciate your coming on tonight with that. It's infuriating, but it's worth knowing. Thank you.
You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, and email. We are also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist, and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on the links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. And you can now hear a weekend review of our podcasts on WHBJ DB, News Talk Radio. Join us and many others, and you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.